Sexuality on the spiritual path, it's caused a lot of stir, including with institutions. It's been a bit complicated. Sexuality we can easily identify with sexuality. Reason why, in all spiritual texts, well, that depends on which ones actually, but often it is said that there's a need for a certain vigilance. Actually, there are also many sages recommending to be vigilant. Many sages also recommend to only have one sexual partner. It prevents you from overfeeding the mind. Now, those are the general recommendations. Now, absolute consciousness doesn't judge anything. So, as a matter of an experience, everything can be lived. And for some people, actually, the spiritual path will go through sexuality. During private discussions, Gerald and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that we've met people who experience sexuality in all kind of different ways. I even had women called sex workers who also are on a spiritual path. So many ideas we have about some professions are false. So one's relationship to sexuality can be very different for everyone. I'll talk from my experience. That'll be easier. To me, sexuality has been a transposition of my way of experiencing the world. You could say that it was becoming more and more subtle. In the beginning, it was, well, I guess it was only physical. Then I had a conscious approach of the physical body. I was practicing martial arts since I was a child, so I was trying to be very conscious and present. And little by little, it became more subtle. Actually, funnily, exactly like with martial arts, it becomes less and less physical and more energetic. That's what we call internal martial arts. So sexuality was getting more and more energetic. I could feel the energies flow, what impact it has on the vital centers, but it was freed from the notion of technicality. I've never tried to see that as something technical. I find that, well, everyone's free to do what they want, but to bring technicality into that, what I mean by that is to bring the mind in it, to try and frame things. Well, I feel like we're missing out on something. So it was happening on an energetic level, but it was spontaneous. And indeed, little by little, there's a sort of, well, at first it's dual. There's a duality, inevitably, because the body is an object. So our body is an object, and so the body in front of us also is. As long as we are identified to objects, there's this sense that there can't be fusion. But comes a moment where can be experimented altered states of consciousness, including what we sometimes call the Kundalini, because during sexuality, Tantrika masters talk about, Tantrika masters are those who teach ancestral Tantrism, which is not reduced to sexuality only, but I'm mentioning it here because we're talking about it. So it is possible to awaken the Kundalini and to transcend identification to the body during sexuality. Same with identification to time and space. And actually, there can be realization of the self. It is quite known. There are a few stories about monks in Tibet, for instance. I remember a Tibetan monk who was involved in an intense sadhana with his master, and his master told him to go into the village and to experience sexuality with a woman. and he realized the self by then. So that's part of what's possible. And came a moment when, while on the path, I felt that there was no one left in command anymore, and I mean it in a general way. And it also manifested itself in sexuality, meaning there's a sort of spontaneity of life happening. It just happens. I would call it a spontaneous dance, and I can see clearly there's no one in control. And it becomes, well, since we're switching to the absolute, I don't have many words left to explain what's happening. But what's for certain is that no one's in control of anything. That's for sure. The interesting part is that as anything deeply intimate, like for instance, I did a lot of music too, and learning to sing, learning about your voice and singing draws you back to something very intimate and kind of shows you where you're at with the ego, with the beliefs about what you think you are, the little me, the character. Well, then the same happens with sexuality. We can see the ego coming out more strongly since it is something very intimate. It can come out more strongly. So we can see the controlling tendency, the dominating tendency, the fears, lack of trust. It all comes up more clearly. Same with learning about your voice. Well, it's the same with sexuality. Reason why it is interesting to be aware of what's happening. And as in every relationships, I'll finish by saying that it is very interesting to be transparent and clear with each other. And if judgments come up, notice them without judging the judgment. And boy, is there a lot of judgments, because sexuality and spirituality are often opposed, even though it is simply a life expression. There's nothing to judge. So, the sacred center, that's how we sometimes call it, the sacred center. Why is it the central point of all preoccupations to most people? Because through this center passes a certain form of manifestation of creation, including bodies, physical bodies. And to achieve that, usually there will be intercourse. And the body is made of erogenous zones, so there are pleasures and thrills to which we tend to get attached to. But why? Why does it become the central point of focalization? It is due to the emission of chemical substances in the body that are released, and it adds an object, and the mind is right behind. So inevitably for the mind, it creates a focal point. It can be imprisoning too, a point of obsession. And we stay on the same plane, a plane of pleasure and physical thrills only. Whereas what's behind, since we call it the sacred center, is the center of creation. In some cultures, may it be philosophical, religious, or spiritual, it is said that it is the center through which the divinities create the world, the universes, etc. So there is indeed a message underlying that would be of an absolute nature. This energy, when we manage to transform and transcend it, to reach, so to speak, reach a plane where there's no more attachment to it, no more focalization. First, you need to be able to establish this energy out of time. If we're not bound to time anymore, like you have a couple making love, if there's no more temporality, then necessarily the experience and approach of sexuality won't be the same anymore. Something really transcendental will happen, and from then on, because they are much more aware, they will transform something that was a sexual thrill into something conscious. Both of them can. Sometimes only one experiences that. Sometimes it is the both of them. And from that moment on, there's a sort of complete transformation, and we can reach enlightenment through this path. So it is a center. Not that it is more important than others, but nevertheless, through this one happens a lot of things, and we have a lot of beliefs about it. For instance, we may think that we have to have sex, but that's not an obligation. We can have a path with sexuality and a path without. That's not a problem. What you need is to be true, sincere, honest about your way of perceiving sexuality so that you don't fool yourself. Because sexuality is something that we lie a lot around it, we cheat a lot around it. It is something of a taboo, secret. Reason why there's so many issues around it, so many abuses, rapes, and so on, because we're not being clear about it. So the first thing to do is to clarify our approach with our own personal sexuality, and then with our partner, to then be able to go step by step and go further and further. Then comes a moment where we can transcend all that and we can reach something else. There's a great confusion between the Western world and India concerning, we mentioned the Tantrika masters, so around Tantrism. Of course, sexuality is part of Tantrism, but it is minute compared to the full teaching behind it. It's incomparable. Here in the Western society, and it's probably tied to our relation to sexuality, we transformed it into something that is almost entirely focused on sexuality. But that's wrong. That's not what Tantrism is about. It is simply love, but not necessarily sexual love. We're talking about divine love, comes from the heart, the kindling of the heart. So there's quite some confusions there. One last thing. There's a sexuality which is not well known, that some mystics experience, and that we can live while on an intense sadhana, which is a sexuality that you could call astral. It might sound strange, but you'll have sexual relations with what we call devas in India, divinities, and other subtle beings. And that can also happen while we are involved in an intense sadhana while being single on earth. Those practices can happen. Here in France, a few nuns I met with were experimenting an intimate physical relation with the Christ. When I say physical, I mean that it was experienced in the physical body, but it was happening with the subtle bodies. It's not something well known, but it does exist. Yeah, it does exist. It is actually pretty common during sadhanas, very intense ones, and it can be experienced in the astral with our spiritual master or guru, but that's on that level that happens. So yeah, of course.